Have you ever wondered why some leaders manage to stay calm even when everything around them is crumbling? Why do certain people inspire without shouting and command simply by their presence? In today's world, where meetings catch fire, goals turn into invisible shackles and ego speaks louder than reason, most people are on the verge of an emotional breakdown. People are tired of controlling everything except themselves. But there is another path. An ancient, powerful, and more relevant than ever path, Stoicism. In this video, you'll discover why the greatest emperors in history had more wisdom than haste, more silence than vanity, more self-control than strategies, and how this philosophy can transform the way you lead, produce, and live, even when the whole world demands that you run faster. Whether you're a manager, an entrepreneur, or simply someone trying to be better every day, Stoicism will show you how to achieve true success without losing peace in the process. 1. Leading with wisdom. What Marcus Aurelius would teach you in your office. The difference between commanding and inspiring. Calmness in the face of corporate chaos. How to practice self-control even under pressure. There is a silence that commands more than a voice, and Marcus Aurelius knew this. He didn't shout, didn't impose, he persuaded through the integrity of his gaze and the serenity with which he walked among soldiers and advisors. Imagine him in a meeting room today. While everyone raises their voice to win an ego-driven dispute, he remains seated, silent, absorbing what others haven't yet noticed. That's where true leadership begins, not by imposing fear, but by inspiring trust. Stoicism doesn't demand applause, it demands virtue. And true influence isn't about forcing obedience, but about embodying what you wish to see in others. Leading isn't about controlling people, it's about controlling yourself, even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. Marcus Aurelius wrote his thoughts in the early hours, while the empire burned with dilemmas and conflicts. He didn't give in to despair, nor did he need a stage to show strength. His authority stemmed from self-control, from the mental clarity that Stoicism taught him daily. A Stoic leader isn't the one who reacts to chaos, but the one who moves through it with steady steps and deep breaths. And if there's one virtue that transforms an ordinary boss into a model of success, that virtue is inner mastery. You can hold a high position and still be a prisoner of your own impulsiveness, but you can also be someone discreet and silent, who commands the entire room simply by their presence. That is mental organization. That is the growth mindset rooted in serenity. Marcus Aurelius didn't need to raise his voice to be heard, and perhaps, amidst all the haste and vanity that surround modern offices, what's missing isn't a new leadership training, but a rediscovery of the Stoic virtues that shape the essence of those who truly inspire. And if you think that's all, you haven't yet seen what happens when a Stoic is placed in a toxic environment. 2. The Stoic doesn't react. He responds. Emotional self-control in a toxic environment. Avoid outbursts that sabotage your authority. Serene firmness in difficult meetings. Leading with clarity, not impulses. It's easy to explode, to shout, retort, slam the table. All of that is within reach for anyone feeling disrespected or frustrated. But a true leader isn't a ticking time bomb. They understand that every unthinking reaction is a piece of their authority slipping through their fingers. In a toxic environment where chaos feeds on wounded egos and vanity disguised as competence, maintaining emotional control is more than a choice, it's a silent weapon. Stoicism teaches us that you are not what others say or do. You are what you choose to do with it. Imagine a tense meeting. A colleague attacks your decision. The atmosphere grows heavy. Everyone expects a quick response, a retaliation. But the Stoic breathes. They listen more than they speak. They observe more than they accuse. Their firmness lies in a calm gaze, a steady voice, clarity uncontaminated by the aggressive tone of others. This posture disarms, it unsettles, and more than that, it inspires respect. Because firmness isn't about shouting louder, it's about knowing where your feet are when everyone else is losing their ground. Responding with wisdom is a profound act of leadership. It's like keeping the helm steady while the storm tries to shift your course. And only someone with stoic virtue, with well-cultivated mental organization, can achieve this kind of presence. Leading with clarity is choosing day after day not to be a victim of circumstances, but the author of your own conduct. It's not about swallowing insults or feigning indifference. It's about acting with intention, purpose, and awareness. And when this level of awareness becomes habitual, even anger loses its power to command you. 3. Anger is not a leadership tool. How Seneca dismantles the idea that an angry leader is respected. The importance of leading with presence, not shouts. Replacing punishment with stoic guidance. Anger wears a dangerous disguise in the corporate world. Many believe it's a sign of authority, of a firm hand, of someone who doesn't take nonsense. But Seneca, the Stoic who wrote about human passions with almost surgical lucidity, saw anger as a form of weakness. He said it blinds, distorts judgment, and turns even the wise into beasts. And this is especially true for those who lead, because a leader who shouts, intimidates, or humiliates may be heard, but will never be truly followed. Presence isn't imposed with yells, it's built with posture, with coherence, with the kind of silence that quiets an entire room without a hint of arrogance. A Stoic leader enters a space and doesn't need to announce their authority. It's imprinted in their calm gaze, their measured gestures, the gentle strength of their listening. Shouting is easy. Anyone with a title can do it. But inspiring respect with serenity is an art. And like any refined art, it requires emotional discipline, personal transformation, and a deep commitment to one's own virtue. When you trade punishment for guidance, fear for clarity, and impulse for wisdom, something begins to shift in the dynamics around you. The team stops acting out of obligation and starts following out of admiration. You stop being a reactive boss and become a silent mentor who knows that every correction must come with purpose. Stoic leadership understands that true success isn't about making others fear mistakes. It's about making them want to succeed. And if this already inspires you, imagine the power of acting without needing to promote yourself. 4. Silent productivity, the power of acting without self-promotion. How Stoics viewed daily efficiency. Doing the right thing without expecting applause. Work as a virtue, not vanity. There's a silent nobility in those who work without fanfare, in those who do what needs to be done without the constant need for recognition, applause, or the spotlight. Stoics always saw productivity not as a means to stand out, but as a reflection of character. Marcus Aurelius said the bee doesn't boast about the honey it produces, it simply fulfills its role. And so it is with the leader who understands the value of silence. They don't need to announce their deeds because their impact speaks louder than any self-aggrandizing speech. In times when those who show more than they do are valued, silent productivity becomes a rare and powerful form of Stoic virtue. You don't need to share every completed task or repeat how many hours you worked on a project. True success comes from within. It flourishes in the consistency of someone who rises every day with discipline, focus, and purpose, not to be seen, but because they know what needs to be done. This kind of mental organization creates a growth mindset rooted not in vanity, but in responsibility. Doing the right thing without expecting applause is one of the purest expressions of Stoicism in action, because only those who master their own ego can serve with excellence, even when no one is watching. And that, in the end, is what separates those who shine for a moment from those who remain as silent pillars of great achievements. When work becomes a temple and not a stage, productivity stops being about metrics and starts being about purpose. And there's a place where this purpose is tested every day, in meetings where everything seems to catch fire. 5. The meeting is on fire. Be the stoic ice in the room. Stoic techniques for handling conflict. How to breathe, listen, and resolve without drama. Stoicism as a competitive, emotional advantage. Every company has those meetings where the tension seems to cut through the air. People speaking too loudly, veiled accusations, silences heavy with resentment. It's in these moments that a true leader doesn't get caught up in the heat of emotion. They become the ice that cools the room. A Stoic enters the room with a clear gaze, light shoulders, and a prepared mind. They know that what's happening outside is merely a reflection of the inner disorder of others. And that's why they remain unaffected. They listen more than they speak. They observe more than they accuse. They inspire even without trying. Breathing deeply before responding isn't weakness, it's strategy. Stoics practice this as a ritual of emotional survival. Instead of jumping into conflict, they first dive into themselves. And you can do the same. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly. Observe the tone of the conversation. Identify the root of the problem before offering any words. Truly listening is a rare virtue, but it's the one that opens doors where arguments only collide. Resolving without drama is a skill that can be learned, and if you master it, you'll not only be more respected, but you'll become indispensable. In the end, Stoicism isn't just a beautiful philosophy, it's a competitive advantage. Those who master their inner world aren't swept away by others' emotions, and in a corporate setting, that makes you unshakable. While others react with impulsiveness, you lead with presence. While others raise their tone, you calm the tension. While everyone wants to win the argument, you win by example. And it all begins long before the meeting. It starts in the first hour of your day, where Stoic discipline finds its true training ground. 6. Discipline is freedom. The morning routine of a Stoic leader. A ritual of focus, reflection, and prioritization. How to start the day with purpose. Practical techniques for Stoic journaling and meditation. Before the world wakes, the Stoic is already awake, and not just with their eyes, but with intention. The morning is their silent temple, a sacred space where the mind hasn't yet been invaded by emails, noise, and external demands. It's in this space that discipline flourishes, not as imposed rigidity, but as chosen freedom. Because when you command the start of your day, you drastically reduce the power chaos has over you. And whether you're a CEO or an intern, the difference between an ordinary day and a transformative one begins with what you do before even picking up your phone. The Stoic morning routine doesn't need to be complex. 10 minutes of silence, a mug of coffee or tea, an open notebook on the table. You sit and write, "What is within my control today?" And let the answer come. You might jot down your challenges, your intentions, or simply observe your thoughts with honesty. Stoic journaling is more than a vent. It's an anchor, a way to organize your mind before the emotional storm begins. Marcus Aurelius did this daily, and perhaps that's why he could govern an empire without losing himself. And if writing takes you inward, meditation helps you stay there. 5 minutes of deep breathing. Focus on a phrase. Nothing external defines me. I am what I choose to be now. Sounds simple? It is. And it's precisely this simplicity that strengthens. Stoic virtue doesn't need performance, only consistency. Success isn't made only of grand decisions, but of small, daily alignments. Start with this ritual. Not to control the entire day, but to avoid being controlled by it. Because when you learn to master your first hour, you also master the conflicts that arise in relationships, even in how you try to influence others. Did you like the structure of topic 6, or would you like any adjustments before we proceed? 7. Don't control people, control yourself. Epictetus in HR, the line between influence and imposition, how self-responsibility builds respect. The culture of example, not imposition. Epictetus said, you only have power over your own choices. And this should be plastered on the walls of every HR department, every leadership role, every heart tasked with guiding others. Because in the impulse to change others, many forget themselves. They try to force, pressure, manipulate, when true influence comes from something much simpler. Living example. A leader who controls themselves inspires more than 1,000 speeches about behavior. Stoicism doesn't teach how to control others. It teaches how to be unshakable within. When you are responsible for yourself, something shifts in the air around you. People sense that you don't just talk, you live what you say. And that sparks genuine respect, not the kind forced by hierarchy, but the kind that springs from recognizing rare integrity. Self-responsibility is the backbone of Stoic leadership. It's when you don't outsource blame, don't hide behind excuses, don't impose anything you haven't first conquered within yourself. It's when you start treating mistakes as stepping stones, not sentences, and discipline as an honor, not a burden. The problem with many leaders is wanting others to change without transforming themselves. But inspiration isn't planted with orders. Inspiration is watered with attitude. Stoicism reminds us that what we are speaks so loudly that sometimes no one hears what we say. Leading with Stoic virtue is about building a culture where example becomes the manual, where people start acting better not out of fear, but because they saw you do better, even when no one was watching. And when you begin to question your own vanity, a question arises, what after all is truly healthy ambition? 8. Fame, promotion, status. What would Stoics say about professional ambition? The difference between purpose and vanity. When growth becomes a prison. Ambition anchored in solid values. There's a fine line between wanting to grow and being consumed by the desire to climb. The Stoics knew this trap well. Epictetus warned, you can conquer the world and still lose yourself. Ambition, when rooted in purpose, propels us forward, but when fueled by vanity, it enslaves us. And in the workplace, where titles shine and positions seduce, it's easy to confuse recognition with personal worth. Stoic success, however, is different. It's silent, steady, built on real virtues, not on fleeting applause. Some lose themselves when promoted, because deep down, they never sought to serve. They sought to be seen. And when that happens, every decision becomes an attempt to maintain the pedestal, not to create impact. That's when growth becomes a prison. You climb, but feel less free. You accumulate achievements, but find no meaning. The Stoics distrusted public glory for exactly this reason, because it seduces, but doesn't fulfill. They teach us to grow inwardly before climbing outwardly, and more, to not place our peace in the hands of something as fickle as others' opinions. Ambition isn't the problem. The problem is the foundation it's built upon. When born of ego, ambition devours, but when born of duty, it builds. A Stoic growth mindset seeks excellence, not to compete, but to contribute. It desires to rise, yes, but while lifting others along. It understands that success without purpose is just a beautiful castle, built on sand. And if all this resonates with you, maybe it's time to rethink even how you correct those around you. 9. How a Stoic gives feedback without offending, the art of saying what's necessary with empathy. Silence as a tool for impact. Feedback as an invitation to growth, not judgment. Giving feedback is an art few master. because it involves far more listening than speaking, more compassion than technique. A Stoic, faced with another's mistake, doesn't react with frustration. They respond with clarity and humanity. They understand that correcting is an opportunity to elevate, not diminish. So every word is chosen with precision, every pause is intentional, every gesture communicates respect. The Stoic leader speaks to transform, not to wound, and so their words carry weight, but don't hurt. They correct, but don't condemn. They awaken, but don't shame. There's a kind of silence that precedes truth. The Stoic uses this silence as a bridge, not a wall. Before giving any feedback, they observe. They ask themselves, why did this person act this way? What can I teach in this situation? What's the real need here, to correct or to understand? It's this reflective pause that distinguishes impulsive feedback from profound guidance. When you silence yourself before speaking, you don't repress, you refine, and in that refinement, a communication is born that reaches deeper than criticism ever could. Giving feedback, then, becomes an invitation to growth, not a sentence of failure. You don't say, "You failed," but rather, "Here's a better path." You don't threaten, you guide. You don't demand, you awaken. Stoicism transforms the leader into a mirror, someone who shows others what they can't yet see in a way that makes them want to look. And this skill changes everything, because the environment stops being defensive and becomes formative. And when that happens, even the fear of making mistakes dissolves, giving way to a lighter, deeper, truer productivity. 10. Work, but don't be a slave to the outcome. The Stoic philosophy of high performance. Focus on the process, not obsession with goals. How to maintain peace even when the numbers fail. Stoic productivity as a tool for mental freedom. Working with excellence isn't the same as living enslaved by goals. The Stoics knew this long before quarterly reports, dashboards, and engagement metrics. Epictetus said, "Do what is yours to do, and leave the rest to the gods." In other words, commit to the process, the effort, the intention, but don't hand your peace over to what's beyond your control. And if you lead, even more so, because your team notices when you're guided by purpose or dominated by performance anxiety. True success is silent, serene, built with consistency, not with relentless pressure. Sometimes the numbers fail. The campaign doesn't deliver, the delivery is late, the project doesn't take off, and in those moments, many collapse. But the Stoic takes a deep breath and asks, "Did I do what was in my control with virtue and clarity?" If the answer is yes, then peace remains. Because they understand that the value of their work isn't in external applause, but in internal fidelity to their purpose. This kind of mental organization is rare, but it's what separates leaders who burn out from those who shine from within. High performance, through the Stoic lens, is about presence, not haste. Stoic productivity is, in fact, a form of freedom, because when you master the process, you stop being a hostage to the outcome. You don't stop when you fail, and you don't get corrupted when you win. You carry on, day after day, doing the best you can with what you have, because that is enough. The growth mindset born from this understanding is unbreakable. It makes you resilient in the face of failures and humble in the face of successes. And more than that, it prepares you for what comes next, because the end of a cycle is always the beginning of a deeper reflection.